Hello and welcome to Evaluate This. I'm Andrew Fryer, and in this short screencast I'm going to show you how to get started with Hyper-V. I've installed Windows Server 2012 on my laptop, and the first thing I'd have to do to get started with Hyper-V is to install the role. So I just go to Add Roles and Features, pick up the name of my laptop, in this case London 3, hit Next, and select the Hyper-V role. I've already done that, as you can see here. So I'm just going to cancel. That would then cause your machine to restart a couple of times, check that you've got the right hardware to support Hyper-V, and then you'll be presented with the Hyper-V console, as you can see here. Just the standard MMC snapping. I've got one virtual machine running at the moment, my domain controller, and two other virtual machines which are off. Before I can create any virtual machines, I'll probably want to configure some settings, and I'll do that from Hyper-V settings. For example, I might want to describe where my virtual hard disks are going to go, the disks that underpin virtual machines, where the virtual machine metadata gets stored. If I'm setting up VDI, I might want to configure a graphics processor unit for that. I can do some advanced configuration to support NUMA, non-uniform memory architecture, in some of the more modern Intel chips. In subsequent videos in this series, I'll be looking at live migration, storage migration, and replication, advanced features to enable me to move and copy virtual machines from one place to another without stopping. Having done that, I'll then want to hook up my virtual machines to the outside world, and I'll use the Virtual Switch Manager to do all of that work. Virtual switches come in three flavors, and you can see that when I try and create a new one: external, internal, and private. I've got my external virtual switch here, which is called CourtNet, and this is external because it's bound to the network interface card on this laptop. And I'm also allowing the laptop as well as the virtual machines to share that network adapter. I've got an internal switch here, and what this means is that the host, the physical laptop, and the virtual machines can see each other, but they're not in any way bound to an external network, and they're therefore not visible from anything outside of this environment. And finally, I could also set up a private network, which would mean the virtual machines can communicate with each other across this network, but that the host machine cannot see those virtual machines at all. If I look at how networking is set up on the actual physical host, you'll see here that I've got my Broadcom onboard network interface card, Ethernet, and if I look at its properties, I can see that I've just got the Hyper-V extensible virtual switch protocol set. And you can see the other switches here that I saw earlier in Hyper-V have got vEthernet in front of them to designate they're being controlled by Hyper-V. So if I look at CourtNet here, properties, you'll see this is where all of the normal protocols are set that we'd expect for a normal switch. So I could, for example, configure IPv4 from here. So having done all of that, I'm ready to go ahead and create a virtual machine. I could just go to New Virtual Machine here. Next, give it a name, store this in a special place. I'm going to put this into my temp VM store here. Assign it some memory, possibly use dynamic memory. Say it's going to be connected to my CourtNet environment. And then I'm presented with various options to attach a disk to the virtual machine. I'm going to attach a virtual hard disk later and click Finish to complete that wizard. I'm now going to create a virtual hard disk, and here we can see the hard disks come in two flavors: VHD, which we had in 2008 R2, and the new VHDX format that goes up to 64 terabytes. I'm going for VHD. Whichever format you choose, you've then got three choices as to what kind of disk that you create. Fixed size: if I create a 10 gigabyte disk, it's going to take actually 10 gigabytes on my physical hard drive. Dynamically expanding, which is like thin provisioning, and what I'm going to choose, differencing, which is where I have already prepared a disk, and then what I'm going to do is store the differences to that disk that are used by this virtual machine and leave the parent disk alone. So that's the differencing disk. Then I have to identify where the parent is, and if I just browse to that, I'm going to use this sysprep copy of Windows Server 2012. And now I'm in a position to start this virtual machine. But before I do that, I'm going to have a look at its settings. So here's what we created. We can add in more network adapters. I can also add in fiber channel adapters now, so I can talk to those kinds of SANs, which is new for Server 2012. Dynamic memory here allows me to provision more memory at startup than I'm going to use when I'm actually running the machine, and then allow the machine to take more memory later on if it needs to. This is great for VDI. I can now add in more logical processors. In Windows Server 2012, we can go up to 64 cores in any edition. I can only stop at 8 here because I've only got 8 cores in my laptop. That disk I created earlier, I now need to add into here, so I'm just going to browse to that. And here it is. And then I can also add in subsequent SCSI disks. I can see that I've got my network connected to CorpNet, and I've got a number of other advanced features in here which we'll look at in later parts of this series. For now I'm done, and I can start that virtual machine. And now that virtual machine's come out of SysPrep, I can just click on it, log in and start using it. And that's how easy it is to create a virtual machine in Windows Server 2012 with Hyper-V. If you want to try this yourself, there's a download link to the Evaluation Edition at the bottom of this screen.